Ty and Mitch here to talk about drugs and alcohol again.
Here to shed some light on drug addiction, alcoholism, and what rehab really looks like. Welcome to the studio. My name is Ty Empey. This is Mitch Payne, and we're here to talk to you about drugs and alcohol. And we're going to be introducing this new video series. Mitch and I have been working in the rehab world for quite a few years now. We feel like we have a lot of knowledge about, rehab and the hurdles and the questions and the challenges, and we're just loaded with different stories and examples and things that people need to know about the world of rehab. It can be a difficult world to navigate, especially for family members or clients themselves, and so we're going to be sharing everything that we know here in this video series.
Yeah, we're hoping it to be just kind of an open discussion type format because in addition to working in treatment for years and years, we both have a wealth of using and drinking experience under our belt.
Yes. So to start off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what our plans with this is. We're going to be doing, multiple videos about this, and we're going to talk about different subjects, different topics. We're going to share our own personal experiences. And so today we're going to be talking about reasons why we believe in rehab. Like Mitch said, we both have our own personal experiences, and we've also had a lot of experience helping other people get into rehab, and so we want to share that with you guys. So to kind of start off, tell you a little bit about who we are. Mitch, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So, again, my name is Mitch Payne. I grew up in this area, which is southern Utah. I grew up in a town called Ivins. I started to use drugs and alcohol when I was 17 years old, and I used pretty heavily for about 10 years. I went through treatment several times. Ultimately, I got clean when I was 26 years old. And since then, life has been just absolutely fantastic. I went back to school and finished my degree. I started working in treatment myself, and I've been working in treatment for 6 years almost now. And I got married, and as of 3 weeks ago yesterday, me and my wife just had our first daughter, and her name is Sawyer.
And she's adorable. Yep. My name is Ty Empey, and I grew up in Orem, Utah, and I didn't get into drugs and alcohol until I was in my early 20s, and I got into it because there was some coworkers that I was working with at the time that were, heavy into drinking and using, and, as I wanted to try it and, had some fun experiences there in the beginning that, kind of led me to believe that all of this was okay and it's actually fun and it's not dangerous and I'm not going to get in trouble. And, that led to years and years of drug and alcohol abuse, and that just progressively got worse and worse. And I had ended up ruining a marriage about it, ended up going to jail quite a bit, and ended up on felony probation. And, in my late 20s, when I was 29 years old, ended up going to rehab. That was back in 2016. And, rehab changed my life. And I would not be here today if it weren't for going to that rehab program. And, I started working in rehab after I'd been clean for about a year. And so pretty much since 2017, been working in admissions, helping people get into rehab. And, life today is fantastic. And, it definitely, life didn't get any easier, it just kept getting better. And, everywhere that I wanted to be and hoped to be by this point in my life has been able to come back to me, when for the longest time, I didn't even know that it was going to be possible anymore. And, I've since been remarried now for a while, and have some extra children, married a girl that has already had a couple kids. And, I have a kid of my own, and then we now have 2 kids together. So it's kind of a his, hers, ours sort of
Brady
thing.
bunch.
Yeah, and it's great. So we have kids that our oldest is 15 and our youngest is 1. So we have a wide range in there, and it's pretty great.
Yeah. Well, do you want to jump right into it?
Yeah, so let's jump into, we're going to talk about reasons why we believe in rehab, to hopefully kind of give you guys a little bit of a understanding as to why we're so passionate about this. For me, I believe in rehab because I feel like I had gotten to such a dark place that I wasn't even capable of knowing where to go or how to help myself out of that darkness. And so for me, I was kind of forced into rehab by the court system, and that's what got me there. But then once I got to rehab, I had all these beautiful experiences that would have not ever happened in any other way. And so because of what I learned in rehab, that gave me enough willingness, and I was making enough progress to where like life started to come back to me a little bit, and I was able to really start to see the vision of, hey, I can live like this. I don't ever have to go back to live in the way that I used to live. And it gave me a bit of hope to where I was able to be introduced to new experiences and new people, and I had mentors all along the way that kind of helped me learn new best practices. And I would have never learned about all of the help and the resources that are out there had it not been for rehab.
How many times did you go to treatment?
I went to rehab once.
And I think that people don't understand what an anomaly that is, because a lot of people, it takes multiple tries. Myself, for instance, I went to treatment over 10 times. And when I first went into treatment, I tried storming out. I didn't want to be there. I wasn't court ordered to be there, but things had started to go downhill very quickly for me. I had a couple DUIs that I hadn't been sentenced on yet. But the writing was kind of on the wall that eventually this was going to be forced on me.
Mm-hmm.
But I still thought that I could quit on my own. I knew I had a problem, but I thought that I had the power myself to just stop. And so I would get into treatment, and I would be all gung-ho, but then I would get out and inevitably relapse again. And I think that rehab is important because the last time that I went through was 2017. I was in jail because things obviously got progressively worse, as they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into treatment, and I thought, what are they going to tell me? And it was a treatment center that I had been to before already. And I thought to myself, what are they going to tell me that I don't already know? And it wasn't so much that they told me anything that I didn't already hear, but I was ready to listen. And I think that's the most important part about when is it time to go to rehab, because we see everybody across the spectrum that is coming into treatment. We got people whose wives are telling them to come in, the nudge from the judge, and then we get the ones that are like, hey, I'll do whatever it takes, and it doesn't matter anymore. And those people are usually the type of people that have tried everything else, and their addiction or alcoholism or whatever it is has beat them down to the point where they're willing to try anything. And that's the point that I was at this last time. I said, it doesn't matter if you tell me that I need to scrub toilets the whole time I'm here. Whatever suggestions that you give me, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what finally did it for me that time, is I was ready to do whatever it took because my way wasn't working.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to know, because if you've been to rehab over 10 times, I can't tell you how many times I've helped somebody get into rehab, and can't tell you how many times I've helped somebody get into detox. They've been out, they've been using again. They know that they're struggling. They know that they can't stop on their own. They know that they need help stopping using. And then they come into detox, and then they're like, no, I don't want to go to rehab again. I've already been to rehab 5, 6, 7 times or whatever. And I see so many people that are kind of right in that little middle ground almost, where it's like they've already been several times. And so they've kind of reached what we like to call treatment fatigue, where, it's like, what else am I going to learn? What else are they going to tell me? But for you, what would have happened if you would have stopped going to rehab after 5 or 6 or 7 times? You had to go a couple more times. And so I think that I try to remember that when I'm dealing with people, because there's times where I'll help somebody get into rehab for their very first time, and then they'll do really well for a little bit, and then 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, they're calling me, they need to get back in. They come in, they go again, they get out, they relapse, then it's just kind of this cycle. And then come the third or fourth time that they're having to come back in, and I have these conversations with them, and I'm like, what do you need to do different? What are you missing? Did you do this? Have you thought about this? Have we talked about this? And, I really want to try to help them get to that point where it's like, hey, what are you missing here? And it can be a little frustrating at times, because for me, I have conversations with these people and I'm like, dude, you just got to do this, or, hey, all you have to do is this, and, try working on this, focus on this. And then they get in and they get out and they relapse, but it's not up to me to decide, is that going to be the last time that they go to rehab?
Yeah.
And it might take them several times, and before they get to that point that you talked about, where you were willing to do whatever it took. And, you probably learned a whole lot in your first several times in rehab.
Yeah.
And you learned some good stuff, and you made some progress, and you did some assignments and all that stuff, but, until you got to that point where you were just willing to let it all go, and so it's hard for people that have kind of been several times, and it's like, why do I need to keep trying this? And it's like, we don't get to decide when it's going to be your last time. We just have to keep giving everybody another chance.
Well, and with that, like, even though I had been so many times, because this time was the time that I decided to just absorb it all and do whatever was told to me. And in addition to that, I'm involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was working the steps. I got the sponsor. I went sober. I mean, I did the whole thing. I was like poster child for recovery. But because of that willingness and the surrender and everything, it was really like it was my first time in rehab.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people come through and they're doing it for, X, Y, and Z reason. But, this was the time that I wasn't trying to be, and as silly as it sounds, like the cool kid in rehab. I wasn't trying to like be in some clique or fall in love with some rehab girl, which, I was always doing. It always happens, and it never works out. Yeah. But
unless she's the one.
Yeah. And nobody else understood.
Right.
But in addition to that, when someone's in it, on a bender, on a sick one, whatever, and, after you've used and drank and done your dirt for so long, all these doors start to close, right? Your family doesn't want to talk to you. Your wife probably kicks you out. Your kids, probably maybe they can't talk to you because the state's involved or whatever it is. At the end of the day, usually treatment is there to help. And, we try to help people get to wherever they need to go. And it's not always with us. It's, wherever. But, there's 12-step groups, there's USARA, there's, so just knowing people in the circle can be very helpful, because when I was in the depths of it, someone picked up the phone when I called, and it was actually you. I guess we might as well just say it. I was in jail, you picked up, and you helped me get into treatment in September of 2017.
That was your last time, though.
That was my last time.
Maybe
my most recent time. Hopefully last time forever.
Yeah, for sure. But you mentioned something that I think is important, and that's another reason why I believe in rehab. I believe in rehab because rehab is what introduced me to the 12 steps. And there's lots of different 12-step programs out there. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. There's just all sorts of 12-step groups. I didn't even know what the 12 steps were before I went to rehab. And when I went to rehab, and pretty early on when I started being able to go to meetings and whatnot, they took me to my first 12-step meeting with the group, and it was down the street and around the corner from where I was living. And I rode my bike past there all the time on State Street in Orem. And I think it was called the Palace. And I didn't even know the Palace existed. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know it was a place. I think I had seen in movies people sitting in a circle and like, hi, my name's Joe and I'm an alcoholic. But I didn't know what the 12 steps were. I didn't know what each one was. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know the principles and the application of it and all that stuff. I mean, I knew probably heard of Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, but I didn't know it was even a thing. And, when I got into rehab and started going to all these meetings, that take us to one meeting at this place on this night, and then another meeting at this place on this night, another meeting on this place on this night. And I was introduced to this whole like underbelly of society of like people that are meeting in these places on days and times where like everybody that's trying to live clean and sober just like converges into this group, and everybody's there to kind of help each other. And I was introduced to that, and it was, I would be able to listen to people that had success, and I've been clean for this long, this many years and whatever. And I started to look up to those people, and I wanted what they had. And so I would have never known that existed had it not been for rehab. And I thought that early on, that was the only way to recover. I thought that the only way you're ever going to get clean and sober is if you go to AA or NA and work the steps, have a sponsor, be of service, all that stuff, And then, when I started working in rehab, and the longer I've done this, the more I've also been able to realize that there's multiple pathways to recovery. And, I believe in the 12 steps. That's what worked for me. But like there's lots of different ways, and there's different resources and groups and people and places. And so I believe that rehab works because it's just going to introduce you into, all these different resources until you find the one that's going to work for you.
Right. And I think that that's really important, because a lot of times I was introduced to and I'm a big 12-step guy now, but when I first got introduced, I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. These people are like, these are alcoholics, but I was drinking alcoholically. At the peak of my drinking, I was drinking a half gallon of whiskey every single day. And it's miserable. It's miserable to drink like that, but it's also like, how delusional was I to step into the rooms like that and be like, these are not my people.
I'm not as bad as them.
In that moment, like, those people were more blood than my parents at that point, and those are the people that I rely on today. But again, just like you said, I think it's important for people to know that the 12 steps aren't for everyone, and there are other pathways. There's smart recovery, there's Dharma recovery. People get really invested into softball,
or even go to church.
Yeah, exactly. And
meditation, or whatever.
Well, yeah, and that kind of boils down to, like, my God maybe isn't your God, who isn't her God, and I think that's the beautiful thing about recovery is it's how you want it to look and what works for you.
Yeah. Another reason why I believe in rehab is, and this is how it was explained to me at one point, and it kind of always stuck with me, but I believe in rehab because rehab is like a microcosm for what real life is like. And what I mean by that is everything that happens in rehab represents a very small scale of what life actually looks like in the real world. And so when you go to a rehab program, you end up being in a group with however many other people, 15, 20, wherever it is that you're going. And there's going to be people in that group that you meet that you're going to click with, and you're going to fall in love with them. And they're going to be some of your best lifelong friends, your support system, people that are really going to have your back for years and years to come. But there's also going to be people in that group that you hate and you can't stand them, and they drive you nuts, and you hate everything that they say, and they are mean to you, and they disagree with everything, and you've got to live with them, but that person represents somebody in your life in the real world. That could be a coworker, that could be a parent, it could be a spouse, it could be anybody really. You have to learn how to get along with those people and be around those people, because if you can't learn how to navigate those relationships, you're not going to be successful in a workplace. You're not going to be successful in a family situation, And so a lot of times as drug addicts, we get into such bad habits about things where, somebody says something that we disagree with, and we're really good at snapping off with anger and like, I'll be louder than you so that you'll stop disagreeing with me, and so like,
got to handle our emotions, reel it in a little bit.
Yeah, you've got to learn how to hear that disagreement or have a little bit of that friction and be able to like control yourself and be like, Yep, I agree. Yep, I understand.
hone your emotional
I
intelligence.
think this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and so those experiences and those interpersonal, connections that you develop with people, you're able to connect with the people that are doing it right. You learn from the people that are doing it wrong. And, hopefully you're able to take that with you out into the real world when you get ready to get back to that point.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, of all the treatment that I've been through, each time I can think of people that, were just, again, like I had my buddies and then the people that I just disagreed with. But yeah, there was one time I was in treatment and I was stuck in a room with this one guy, and it's still a running joke between us because I just could not stand this person. However, again, this last time that I went through treatment, and this was almost 7 years ago, the people that I was with, and a lot of us are still sober today, which is kind of rare to see. There's probably like out of a group of 10 to 15, I would say like 8 or 9 of us are still going strong.
That's fantastic.
Which is really good.
Yeah.
And 2 of them were in my wedding line. One, I see him at least once a week. We go golfing together, and he's just a fantastic person. And so some of those relationships were really good. And like I said, when I went in this last time, it was kind of like you hear like, I'm not here to make friends. That time I was not there to make friends. I was there for me, and I was there to soak up everything that I could. But because I was just trying to do well and everything, those friendships were forged anyway.
Yeah. I believe in rehab because rehab doesn't have all the answers. And that might seem contradictory to itself, but like, I think a lot of times people, they come into rehab and they think like, oh, I just have to go to rehab and I'm going to be fixed. That's all I have to do. And they think that going to rehab is going to solve the problem with their wife or their husband or their family or whatever. And I see a lot of people come in the door and they get there and they're just like, okay, I'm here. And they sit through the groups and they do the assignments and whatever. But what I think a lot of people don't understand is that when you come to rehab, there's nothing we can do to just like heal you and you're never going to want to use drugs or alcohol again. You have to, coming to rehab is more about, learning about yourself. And the only thing that we can do, the best thing that we can do for clients is just give you the most comfortable, loving, therapeutic environment that we can. And hopefully that allows you to go on your own journey of self-discovery. And that's what I hope that people understand is that when you get to the point where you're ready to go to rehab and you're going to make that commitment, you're going to spend the time away from your family, like get to work, and start really looking at yourself and your behaviors and figuring out, what are my bad habits? What do I got to change? What do I got to do different? And we can't do that for you. We can try to help point things out and say, hey, we've noticed that you kind of struggle with this. Let's work on this for a little bit. But if you're resistant to that and you're not willing to set goals and make plans and focus on changing those behaviors, a lot of it's just going to go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. And then you're going to go to rehab a bunch of times. Yeah. But I think you hit it right on the head because if everyone is telling you something about yourself and you're just fighting it, that's probably something you got to take a look at. But if you come into treatment and, like you said, you're just sitting there, it's sort of like if you go to the gym and you sit on a weight machine, but you don't lift anything or you don't turn a treadmill on or something. It's great that you went, but nothing's going to change, right, unless you put it to action.
Yeah. And I think that that's the very heart of rehab. Rehab in its simplest form is all about behavior modification. And all of the groups and the activities and the assignments and the therapy and the counseling, all of that is all about behavior modification. And, that looks like really taking a good hard look at yourself and figuring out, how do I carry myself in certain situations? How do I act, when I'm exposed to these certain conditions or whatever, and looking at that and being like, okay, yeah, that's probably not healthy, and being in a rehab setting allows you, kind of forces you almost to take a look at that stuff. Because if you, we'll use anger as an example. If you have really bad anger issues and, you know, something happens and you're just used to popping off and posturing up and, you know, snapping back at people
And using.
Yeah. I mean, like, great example. You know, a lot of times people will be doing good and somebody will say something that pisses them off a little bit and they're like, F this, I'm leaving. And they go out and they get drunk just because somebody made them mad, you know? And then when you get into rehab and something happens and, you know, a staff member says, hey, you know, it's your turn to do the dishes. I don't want to do the dishes. I don't want to go to bed at this time. I don't want to wake up. You know, people fight against these dumb little rules. And if you're going to react with anger and you're not willing to work on that, then like you're going to get out and you're going to still react to that, you know? And so being in a group setting in a rehab facility, all these behaviors are going to come out. They're going to manifest themselves and it's going to be on display for everybody, you know, and the therapists are going to be able to point that out and say, hey, you know, we've noticed that, you know, you struggle with anger. We noticed that in situations where you're challenged a little bit, you kind of try to recluse a little bit and you want to disconnect from everybody else or whatever it is, you know. And so when things get brought to your attention, that's okay. Like that's why you're there. That's the most safe, the most perfect place for you to learn about those things and start to work on them.
Yeah, it's just all about bringing awareness to the situation. One thing that I really love about rehab is it's a great landing area. You know, like I said before, when I had come into treatment this most recent time, and really I guess most of the times, like I was just out and I was, you know, sometimes I was in jail or I was homeless or I was holed up in some motel room. And when I ultimately would make it to rehab, it was like, okay, I can breathe because I'm not fully focused on using because I know that that's off the table. And so now I can breathe. I remember this most recent time I went in, I was laying on a bed and I was like almost in tears because I hadn't had a bed in a really long time. You know, I went from a mat in purgatory, which is our jail. And that's what our jail's called.
Legit
called
purgatory.
And then before that, I was sleeping in a psych ward. And before that, I was sleeping in a car. And so I hadn't slept in a bed for months. And it was like, okay, I can breathe. I can think about like what my next move is, you know. And I had, you know, however many weeks just to sit and talk and work with a case manager, which was really helpful for me. And so when I went to treatment, I was assigned a case manager that was able to help me with all the outside stuff so that I could focus on all the inside stuff. So they help you with, you know, housing and if you have any legal issues, which a lot of people coming into treatment do, any sort of like outside family relationship issues can be dealt with your therapist. And, you know, if the treatment center that you go to has like a family group night or, you know, family therapy and things like that. But it was just a time for me to come in, breathe a little bit and then plan my next move.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap things up, let's each share a funny story. Something that has happened to you over the years, not in rehab. Funny story from doing admissions, helping people get into rehab. I'll start. And it happened yesterday.
Dang.
I'm sure I have a million more, but I'm going to share the one yesterday. Yesterday, I picked a guy up in Orem, probably 50s, somewhere in there, alcoholic. He was coming from Bountiful and drank a bottle of whiskey on his way down. He got dropped off in Orem. I picked him up at the front runner station in Orem, and then I was driving him back 3.5 hours south to come get into detox. And from probably about Parowan, no. He started the conversation in about Fillmore, and then all the way past Parowan, and that's like, it was probably like an hour and a half or longer. He was talking to one person who was also drunk, and they were just laughing and talking the whole time about, you know, experiences that they had and funny stories. And it was like kind of wretched to listen to they went on and on and on. And we're just like going back and forth and telling all these crass stories and whatnot. But on 3 separate occasions, this gentleman requested to play songs in my car. And so he's like, hey, how do I play a song? I want to play a song. And I was like, okay, here's the cord. So I give him the cord to plug his phone in. And so he struggles to get it in because he was drunk. And he gets his phone plugged in, opens his phone, and then like sees that he has a message. And so he clicks on the message and replies to the message. And then, you know, he goes and checks Facebook or whatever. And then completely forgets that he was supposed to play a song. And that happened 3 different times. And it, like, I was like, hey, are you going to play a song? Oh, yeah. No, you can play a song. Then hands me back the cord. And so I love alcoholics. Alcoholics are my favorite people to check in because they're always feeling good. They're loose. Everything's a party. They're always happy, you know, and then they come into detox. And then, you know, after a couple of days, they kind of wake up to the realization that they've been neglecting everything in their life, and they kind of panic a little bit. And after a couple of days, they realize that, you know, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And they can, you know, have a lot of anxiety and problems to deal with at that point. Heroin addicts, on the other hand, they come in and they're just like,
those are my favorite to bring in.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like they come in and they're always just angry and upset and depressed and sad and miserable and difficult, you know, but then they get feeling better after a few days, and it's like they're feeling the best they've ever felt in a long, long time, and they like wake up to the world and they come alive, and they're the most kind, sweethearted, caring, genuine people. And so I've always thought it was funny with that dynamic. Like, it's always kind of chaos bringing in an alcoholic, especially when they're super drunk and they really don't know what's going on, you know. But heroin addicts, they're sick when they're getting in and they're not having a good time, but then they start feeling better once they come in.
Yeah. My experience though is like alcoholics, they're just, you don't know what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why I'm like, hey man, just relax. Yeah. I was bringing in this guy and he can put him down. I mean, he is a drinker or was a drinker. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he's a big guy, the biggest guy I've ever brought in. And I remember one time I went to pick him up and I found him in a parking lot in Maverick, and he was driving like a little Honda Civic or something. And it was like, you could see through the windows like beer cans. And I was like, oh boy. And he's like, Mitch. And I'm like, come on, man, we're going to detox. And he's like, I just got to finish my beer. And I'm like, no, man, we got to go. And so I'm trying to like pull him out of his car, but I mean, you know who I'm talking about, 400 plus pounds at least, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to pull him out of his car, and he gets out, but then he's just face down on the ground, and it's summertime in St. George. So, I mean, the asphalt's probably like 1,000,000 degrees. I mean, it's just like, and I had another client with me, and she was like, well, let's just get him in. Let's get him in. And so we're trying to pull him into the car, but he's just not getting up. And so at some point we just had to call the paramedics. We're like, and so we're both trying to like push him into my car before the paramedics call. Like, we called the paramedics, but we're like, come on, man, you can just get in. But he's like not helping at all. It was just dead weight and a lot of weight. Yeah. And so we're just trying to smush him in, but he's just like,
burning his hands on the ground.
Yeah, just terrible. And so the paramedics show up, and they're like, oh, mister, and they said his name. And so it was not his first time doing that. And so yeah, we see a lot, but alcoholics are tough.
Yeah.
The meth addicts, those ones are pretty fun.
Yeah,
they're usually just going through their backpack pulling out like old HDMI cords and
all the trinkets in their pockets.
Rocks. They love to collect rocks. Look at this cool rock, but it's like the dumbest pens. Rock you've ever seen.
Yeah. They always have 8 pins in their pocket. Cords, coins, rocks, lighters, all of it.
Nothing worth anything.
Yeah. We'll get into all that on another day. We'll tell more rehab stories or whatever. But every day is great. Every day is chaos. Every day is different. But every day is always the same.
It's never boring.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're going to wrap it up for today. If you want to watch the long form video of today's episode, you can find it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. If you want more informational content or, funny shorts, check us out on TikTok. And if you have any questions about rehab or anything, give us a call at 435-632-3335.
Over and out.